Quick one before we start. Did you do yesterday's task? 20 minutes, one real action, outside your head. If you did, good. Hold on to that feeling, because today we're going to test whether it was actually a plan you followed, or an excuse you've been calling a plan for months. If you didn't do it, that's fine too. That's actually today's entire subject. Stick around. By the end of this video you'll know exactly why it didn't happen, and it's not the reason you think. Last episode I told you planning and doing fire the same reward circuit in your brain. Today we go one level deeper. How to tell, in 30 seconds, whether something wearing a plan's clothes is actually a plan or a very well-produced excuse. Here's the test. It's short, and it's uncomfortable, because it works. Think of one thing you've been planning to do, a project, a change, a decision, for longer than a month. Now answer 3 questions, out loud if you can. 1. What exactly is the very next physical action? Not the goal, not the outcome, the next single, physical, 5-minute step. 2. Could you do that step in the next hour if you wanted to? 3. Why haven't you? Let's slow down on question 1, because this is where most people quietly fail without noticing. If you can't answer clearly, if the next step is vague, like research options or figure out logistics, that's your first clue. Real plans have a next action you could describe to a stranger in 1 sentence, and the stranger could go do it without asking a follow-up question. Here's what that looks like in practice. Someone says their next step toward getting healthier is figure out a routine that works for me. That's not a step. That's a research project disguised as one. Compare it to, put my shoes by the door tonight and walk for 10 minutes before coffee tomorrow. Same goal, wildly different specificity. The first sounds responsible, the second is the only one of the two that actually happens. Try the test on something small right now. Whatever came to mind when I said one thing you've been planning for longer than a month, say the next physical step out loud, in 1 sentence. If what came out was a noun phrase like a plan or a system instead of a verb, email, open, call, write, that's the tell. Excuses stay vague on purpose, because vague can't be checked off, and if it can't be checked off, it can never be proven not to have happened. Question 2. Could you do that step in the next hour if you wanted to? For most things people say they're planning, the honest answer is yes. Sending a message takes 90 seconds, opening a document takes 3. Putting on running shoes takes less time than deciding not to. The physical barrier is almost never the real obstacle, which is exactly why question 2 is so uncomfortable. It removes every logistical excuse and leaves only the psychological one standing in the open. And that's what question 3 drags into the light. Why haven't you? Sit with that question for a second instead of rushing past it, because the first answer that comes up is rarely the real one. I've been busy is almost never true down to the minute. You had 90 seconds today. You had 90 seconds yesterday. I'm waiting for the right time just restates the problem instead of explaining it. Push one layer deeper and you usually land somewhere closer to the truth, because if I send it and they say no, I have to sit with that, or because if I write the paragraph and it's bad, I can't tell myself anymore that I'd be good at this once I started. That's not a scheduling problem, that's a starting problem wearing a planning costume. And question 3 is where the excuse usually just says its own name out loud. Let's get more precise. There are 4 reliable tells that separate a real plan from a disguised excuse. Go through all 4 with whatever you named earlier. You'll know by the end of this section exactly which category it falls into. Tell 1. A plan has a deadline attached to a specific date. An excuse has a deadline attached to a feeling. When I'm ready, when things settle down, when I feel confident enough, feelings don't arrive on a schedule. Dates do. Here's why this matters more than it sounds like it should. A date is falsifiable. You either did the thing by Tuesday or you didn't, and there's no argument about it. A feeling is not falsifiable. You can always claim you're still not quite ready, forever, and nobody, including you, can prove otherwise, because readiness isn't a thing that shows up on a calendar to be checked. That's precisely why feeling-based deadlines are so comfortable. They can never technically be broken. There's nothing to fail, because there was never really a deadline, just a mood pretending to be one. Here's a version of this that trips up otherwise sharp people. Someone says, I'll launch the website once it's ready. That sounds like it has a trigger condition. which feels almost as good as a date. Except ready is a feeling assigned to a piece of software, and software can always be a little more ready. There's always one more button that could be styled better, one more page that could exist. Ready never arrives on its own. Someone has to declare it arrived on a specific day, by force. Compare that to our launch on the 15th. Whatever state it's in, the second version has an actual stopping point. The first has a feeling standing where a date should be, and feelings don't have calendars. Test it on your own plan. Does it have an actual date? Not soon, not this month, a specific day, maybe even a specific hour. If the honest answer is no, more like whenever I feel up to it, you've already found your first excuse marker. Tell 2. A plan survives being written down in one sentence. I will write 300 words every morning at 7 a.m. before checking my phone. That's a plan. I'm going to get serious about writing is a mood, not a plan, and moods don't survive contact with a Tuesday. Notice the difference isn't length, it's specificity. I will write 300 words every morning at 7 a.m. before checking my phone is one sentence, and it tells you exactly what happens, when, and how you'd know if it didn't. I'm going to get serious about writing could mean absolutely anything, which means it's compatible with doing nothing at all and still feeling like you're honoring it. A sentence that's compatible with doing nothing isn't a plan, it's a mood with good posture. Try writing yours down, literally, in one sentence, right now, pausing the video if you need to. If it comes out sounding like a mission statement instead of an instruction you could hand to someone else, that's tell to failing. Tell 3. A real plan makes you slightly uncomfortable when you say it out loud to someone else because it's specific enough to fail publicly. An excuse feels comfortable to repeat because it's vague enough to never be tested. This one surprises people because it runs backwards from intuition. You'd expect the real plan to feel more confident, not less comfortable. But think about why. I'm going to start eating healthier costs you nothing to say at a dinner party. Nobody can check on it. Nobody will remember it next month. And if it doesn't happen, there's no specific claim that got broken. Compare that to I'm replacing lunch with a salad every day this week, starting tomorrow. That one's got exposure built in. Your friend might actually ask on Thursday how it's going. There's a real chance of a visible, specific failure, and that flicker of exposure you feel saying it out loud is the plan proving it's real. Say your one sentence from tell to out loud to an empty room if you have to. If it felt like nothing, if you could repeat it 100 times without a flicker of oot, now I have to actually do that, it's still an excuse. The discomfort isn't a bug, it's the signature of specificity. Tell 4, and this is the big one, a plan gets executed even when motivation is low. An excuse only survives on motivation, which means the moment motivation dips, so does the plan. If your commitment depends entirely on how you feel that morning, you were never planning, you were hoping. This is the tell that actually predicts outcomes because motivation is not a stable resource. It's not there every morning in equal supply. Some days you'll wake up wanting it, most days you won't, and a plan that only works on the good days is, statistically, a plan that runs maybe 1 week in 4. A real plan is boring enough, small enough, and specific enough about time and place that it survives being executed by a tired, unmotivated version of you, because it was never depending on motivation to begin with. It's depending on the calendar and the 10-minute size of the task. Here's a quick gut check. Picture doing your one sentence on the worst day of your week, tired, behind on something else, not feeling it at all. Can you still picture doing it? If the honest mental image is no, obviously not. I'd skip it on a day like that. The plan was never load-bearing. It was resting entirely on a mood, and moods are the least reliable infrastructure you could possibly build a plan on top of. There's a useful way to stress test this before the bad day even arrives. Ask, does executing this plan require me to feel a certain way first, or can I do it mechanically, on autopilot, even irritated about it? Go for a run when I feel inspired fails immediately. Inspiration is exactly the thing that's absent on the days that matter most. Put on shoes, walk to the corner, walk back survives almost any mood, because it barely requires a mood at all, it requires legs and 8 minutes. The less emotional fuel a plan needs to run, the more likely it is to actually run. Put those four together and the test becomes brutally simple. Does it have a date? Is it one clear sentence? Does it feel exposed when spoken aloud? And does it survive a bad mood? For yeses, real plan anything less, you're holding an excuse with a business suit on. Here's the part that stings. You didn't build a bad excuse by accident. You built a good one on purpose without realizing it, because a good excuse has to survive your own scrutiny. If it were obviously weak, you'd have caught it yourself months ago. So your brain did something clever. It dressed the excuse in the language of responsibility. I'm still gathering information. I want to do this properly. I don't want to rush it and mess it up. Every sentence sounds mature. Every sentence sounds like the responsible thing to say. Think about where that language actually comes from. Somewhere along the way you learned, correctly, that impulsive, half-considered decisions can go badly, and that careful, deliberate people tend to do better. That's true, broadly. The trouble is your brain took that true lesson and started applying it as a universal shield, deploying "I'm being careful" as a justification even in situations where careful stopped meaning anything 20 conversations ago and started meaning "I have said this sentence enough times that it no longer requires evidence." Here's an example. Someone's been carefully considering switching careers for over a year. Every time it comes up, the language is impeccable. "I want to make sure I'm making the right decision. I don't want to jump without a safety net. I'm weighing my options," all reasonable sounding individually. But ask what specifically has been weighed in the last month. What option was actually researched last week? What conversation with someone in the target field happened recently? And often the honest answer is nothing concrete happened. The sentence just got repeated again because the sentence itself had started doing the job that actual research used to do. That's exactly why it's worked for so long on other people and mainly on you. The people around you hear "I'm being careful" and back off because pushing back on someone being careful feels rude. And you hear yourself say it and relax slightly because it sounds like something a responsible person would say. So surely you must be one, currently, in this exact moment of not doing the thing. Here's the tell that cuts through all of it. Responsible sounding language that never converts into a dated, one-sentence, embarrassingly specific action is not responsibility. It's a very well-produced excuse, the words of the disguise. The missing date is the truth underneath it. Run a quick audit on your own language. Do you have a phrase you reach for? "I'm still figuring out the best approach. I want to set it up properly first. I'm waiting until I have more bandwidth." That you've said more than 3 times about the same thing, on different occasions, months apart. That repetition is the giveaway. A genuinely careful person doing genuine research produces new information each time you ask. An excuse produces the same sentence, word for word, because nothing underneath it is moved. There's a fast way to catch this in real time, and it works precisely because it's slightly awkward. The next time you catch yourself using one of these responsible sounding phrases, imagine a close friend said the exact same sentence to you about their own stalled project. Would you nod along and say, "Yeah, that's very sensible. Take your time"? Or would you gently ask them what they've actually done about it lately? Most people find they'd push back on their friend within seconds. The sentence doesn't survive being heard from the outside. It only works as a shield when you're the one saying it to yourself, in your own head, where nobody's allowed to ask the follow-up question. Borrow that outside perspective on purpose. Say your excuse phrase out loud, then ask it the follow-up question you'd ask a friend. Usually there isn't a good answer waiting. So let's rebuild it properly, using the 4 tells from before. A real plan sounds almost boring. There's no drama in it. Tuesday and Thursday, 6:30 a.m, gym, upper body every Sunday, 1 hour, apply to 3 jobs. This Friday, send the first email to a potential client, even if the pitch isn't perfect. Boring is the tell of something real. Excuses are dramatic because drama distracts from the missing date. Plans are boring because they don't need distraction. They just need a slot in your week and a body showing up to fill it. Compare the emotional weight of 2 sentences. I'm on a journey to finally take control of my finances and build the future I deserve. That one has drama, ambition, a whole story arc. It also has no date, no number, no specific action, and could be said again word for word in 18 months with nothing having changed. Now compare. Every payday, I moved $100 into savings before I look at the rest of the account. Zero drama. Completely boring, and it's the one that actually moves money. Here's a test for spotting the drama trap in your own language. If explaining your plan to someone takes more than one sentence and starts sounding like a speech, you're probably describing a feeling about the plan rather than the plan itself. Real plans fit in a text message. Excuses need a paragraph because the paragraph is doing the work the specificity should be doing. Notice something else. None of the earlier examples mention feeling ready. That's deliberate. A real plan doesn't wait for confidence. Confidence shows up after the third or fourth repetition, not before the first one. If you're waiting to feel ready before the plan starts, you've swapped a plan for a mood again. This connects directly to what we covered in episode 1. Action generates the information, and, it turns out, the feeling that planning alone never will. Confidence isn't a precondition you arrive with. It's a byproduct that gets manufactured through repetition, the same way calluses form from actually gripping something rough, not from reading about grip strength. Waiting to feel confident before you start a plan is like waiting for calluses before you pick up the bar. It runs the process backwards. There's one more property worth naming explicitly: size. A real plan's first step is almost always smaller than feels appropriate for how much the goal matters to you. That mismatch, big goal, tiny first step, feels wrong, which is exactly why people inflate the first step into something more worthy of the ambition, and then never do it, because a worthy-sized first step is really just a second excuse wearing a costume that looks like ambition instead of avoidance. Someone who wants to write a novel doesn't need write for 3 hours a day, every day, starting Monday as a first plan. That's sized for the goal, not for a human being with a full existing life and zero current writing habit. A plan sized correctly looks almost insultingly small. Tonight, 10 minutes, 1 paragraph, timer on. It survives contact with a bad day precisely because a bad day can still absorb 10 minutes. It couldn't absorb 3 hours. The goal is allowed to be big. The first step has to stay small enough that skipping it would feel more effortful than just doing it. One more example, because this pattern shows up everywhere once you start looking for it. Someone wants to repair a strained relationship with a family member. The oversized first step is have a long, honest conversation where we finally clear the air about everything. That's not a first step. That's the eventual outcome, dressed up as a starting point. And it's heavy enough that it gets postponed indefinitely because nobody feels ready to open that conversation cold. The correctly sized first step is smaller and less dramatic. Send 1 text this week, no agenda, just checking in. It doesn't resolve anything. It doesn't need to. It just needs to be small enough to actually happen, because the actual conversation, if it ever happens, will be built on 3 or 4 of these small steps, not conjured whole out of one heroic attempt. Today's task uses the exact test from the start of this video, but now you write it down. Take the thing you've been planning for over a month. Write 1 sentence with a specific date and a specific physical action, small enough that it embarrasses you slightly to admit how small it is. Not I'll start eating healthier. Instead, tomorrow, 12 p.m, I replace lunch with a salad. Once, not I'll work on my side project. Instead, today, 8 p.m, I open the file and write for 15 minutes, timer on. Not I'll get my finances in order. Instead, Friday, 9 a.m, I open my banking app and write down every subscription I'm currently paying for. Just the list, nothing else, then run the 4 tells against it. Does it have a date? Is it 1 sentence? Does it feel slightly exposed to say out loud? Would it survive a bad mood? If it passes all 4, you now have your first real plan of this series. Ironic, considering this whole series is about starting before you plan. But this is different. This is a plan built after action, using information from what you actually did yesterday. That's the order that works. One more thing before you go do it. Say it out loud to 1 other person today, or post it in the comments below. Not because you need permission, but because tell 3 said exposure is what separates a plan from an excuse, and right now, this sentence has only ever existed inside your head, which means it hasn't been tested yet. Quick recap. The test. Name the next physical step. Ask if you could do it within the hour. Ask why you haven't. 4 tells of a real plan. A specific date. 1 clear sentence. mild discomfort when spoken aloud, and survival through low motivation. Well-dressed excuses use responsible-sounding language precisely because it disguises the missing date, and the giveaway is a phrase you've repeated for months without new information behind it. Real plans are boring and small on purpose. Drama and oversized first steps are what excuses use to hide. Next episode, we run a 24-hour experiment. Drop whatever plan you're currently following, act raw, and measure what actually happens. It's going to be uncomfortable in a completely different way to today. For now, write your one sentence. Date, action, no feelings required. See you in episode 3.